Tonight, the flooding state of emergency in New York City. Historic rains bring widespread life-threatening flash flooding. Rescue crews plucking people from their cars and homes. The nation's busiest subways and trains halted, but not stopping a Brooklyn bus. An airport terminal underwater. Up to 10 inches of rain could fall before it all ends. Also tonight, countdown to the shutdown. Last-ditch efforts to fund the government fail with no plan in sight. Speaker McCarthy under pressure. Millions of workers set to go without pay, and millions more could lose services in just over 24 hours. The death of a stateswoman, Dianne Feinstein, the trailblazing California Democrat who served in the Senate for 3 decades. How she broke the glass ceiling for so many. Bipartisan tributes coming in tonight. Just in, the first guilty plea in the Trump election interference case in Georgia. A surprise arrest in the murder of rapper Tupac Shakur. Why now, after 30 years? The UAW expanding its strike against Ford and GM as talks stall. The fight over electric cars. And Harry Smith on whether a new grocery store can help feed one American town and heal old wounds.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening and welcome. As we come on the air, a nightmare commute home is underway here in the nation's biggest metropolitan area, virtually paralyzed today by flooding rains. New York City under a state of emergency tonight with 23 million people under flood watches across New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. New York's governor saying this is not an ordinary rainfall, calling it historic. Numerous cars have been stranded on flooded urban streets and roads, some drivers in need of rescue. Subways and suburban rail trains stopped after water flooded tracks, and flight disruptions at the region's 3 major airports rippling across the country tonight. Up to 8 inches of rain have fallen in the New York area since last night. Some areas bracing for double-digit rainfall amounts before it's all over. Stephanie Goss starts us off from Brooklyn tonight. How serious was the flooding there, Steph?
Lester, it rained so hard, so fast, this water had nowhere to go. 2 to 3 months worth in a single day, and there were places here in Brooklyn where it almost rained 3 inches in an hour. And while it has let up a little bit, the damage is done. When the rain started coming down, it didn't stop overnight and into rush hour. New York City grinding nearly to a halt.
This is time for heightened alertness and extreme caution.
States of emergency declared in New York and New Jersey, with major roadways flooded.
Oh my God.
Drivers in stalled cars had to be rescued in the city and its suburbs, along with several people living in basement apartments. The heaviest rain hitting neighborhoods in Brooklyn and Queens. Transportation has been a nightmare. One city bus braving a flooded street while passengers had no choice but get soaked. The rain impacting every subway line. Some shut down altogether. In train stations, water poured through grates, flowed downstairs, and even gushed straight out of the walls.
The trains weren't running because of flooding.
Commuter trains in and out of the city shut down. Hundreds of flights canceled. At JFK, it was the wettest day ever recorded, while at LaGuardia, an entire terminal had to be closed when rainwater poured into departures.
It was all bad, honestly. Like, you had water coming in all through the bathrooms, all through the entrance there.
Some areas could see 10 inches before it's all over. High-intensity rainfall like this, an effect of climate change. The condition so bad it reminded many New Yorkers of the remnants of Hurricane Ida that swept in and killed 13 people 2 years ago. Many of the deaths then happening in basement apartments where flash floods caught families by surprise. The governor telling people today not to take any chances.
Leave your home if you're starting to see water accumulate. Don't wait until it's up to your knees or higher.
Tonight, another rush hour, and still the rain has not stopped. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, Brooklyn.
Also tonight, they tried and failed again today to come up with a deal in Congress to keep the government funded and running past tomorrow's midnight deadline, with millions of federal workers and many government programs threatened. Garrett Hake now with late details.
Tonight, the federal government on the brink of shutdown.
The bill is not passed.
21 House Republicans joining with Democrats to defeat Speaker McCarthy's latest stopgap plan to keep the government open while slashing spending.
Look up the word dysfunction in the dictionary and you'll see United States Congress drawn to 1/43rd scale.
A handful of hardline conservatives demanding even more spending cuts.
The American people get screwed with more debt and more spending that they do not want.
Sparking Republican anger with just 1 day left to pass a spending bill and avoid a midnight shutdown Saturday.
They killed the most conservative position we could take and then called themselves the real conservatives, which is like, make that make sense. You can't make it make sense.
The speaker looking to shift blame if 3.5 million federal workers are forced to forego paychecks, though most will receive back pay when a shutdown ends.
Mr. Speaker, what do you say to federal workers who are worried about their paychecks? That this is a political gamble. They're worried about their
question. So I'm saying the Republicans in here are trying to keep the government open. It sounds like you think the Democrats are going to shut it down. I don't think government should shut down.
As President Biden warned of the impact on 2 million military families who will serve without pay.
We can't be playing politics while our troops stand in the breach. It's an absolute dereliction of duty.
Families like Jessica Manfries. Her husband serves in the Coast Guard. Her message for lawmakers.
If you believe in this country, if you believe in the people that are willing to lay their lives down to defend it, then show us. Work together.
Garrett, you have covered Congress a long time. What are the chances they solve this by tomorrow's deadline?
Well, Lester, the chances are bad now, and they're getting worse by the hour. The House has no plan, and the Senate has already gone home for the night. The government shuts down at midnight tomorrow night, and Lester, lawmakers will still be paid in the event of a shutdown.
Garrett Haake, thanks. A shutdown of the federal government is not absolute. For example, while the VA says veterans' health care will not be impacted, some other VA services will be suspended and regional benefits offices will be closed. A shutdown would affect government programs many others depend on, including Head Start for low-income children and food assistance through WIC. And as for essential workers, including the millions who keep the country safely moving each day, they'll stay on the job but be forced to work without pay, as they did during the 2019 government shutdown. Tom Costello has that part of the story.
From the Border Patrol to the Coast Guard to food inspectors to the nation's airports, yet another government shutdown will hit the very people who keep the country safe, including 50,000 TSA officers who ensure planes are safe to fly.
Takeoff 4 left, Delta 204.
And 10,500 air traffic controllers, already understaffed and working 10-hour days, 6-day weeks. Controller errors have led to several close calls in the nation's skies this year. Now, the added stress of working without pay.
You can't not pay your mortgages. You can't not pay your car payments. You can't not pay your utilities. But the government is giving us zero balance paydays.
4 years ago, many TSA officers going without a paycheck started quitting so they could find a job that would put food on the table. Air traffic controllers, after about a month, started calling in sick. The 2019 shutdown finally ended when air travel was reduced to a trickle. Also affected this year, the nation's parks. NBC's Priscilla Thompson is at Big Thicket National Preserve in Texas.
Across the country, 423 national parks could be shuttered, meaning services from trash collection to bathroom cleaning and campground operations would all be halted.
While Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare will continue, passport processing will be further delayed. America's frontline workers and everyday Americans living paycheck to paycheck, again in the crosshairs of political brinkmanship, even as members of Congress continue collecting their pay. Tom Costello, NBC News, Washington.
Dianne Feinstein, the longest-serving woman in Senate history and a role model for generations of women, has died at age 90. Andrea Mitchell reports on her life and legacy.
Tonight, tributes from both sides of the aisle for Dianne Feinstein, her desk draped in black, a vase of white roses, for a senator known for sending flowers to colleagues.
Today, there are 25 women serving in this chamber, and every one of them would admit they stand on Dianne's shoulders.
Her beloved home state of California and our entire nation are better for her dogged advocacy and diligent service.
The country's going to miss her dearly, and so will Jill and I.
And women senators for whom she painted watercolors.
Every time I would pass by, I would look at it and think about how talented Diane was in so many different areas.
Feinstein's political career began in tragedy. November 1978, San Francisco Mayor George Moscone and Board of Supervisors member Harvey Milk were assassinated in City Hall.
Both Mayor Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk have been shot and killed.
Cementing her lifelong commitment to gun safety. Elected San Francisco's mayor, she was on Democratic nominee Walter Mondale's shortlist for running mate before he chose Geraldine Ferraro.
I've had an opportunity now to be the first woman and the first mayor to be asked to go through an interview process. And I view that as a major opening of a door.
It was the public outcry over the all-male Judiciary Committee's grilling of Anita Hill at the Clarence Thomas hearings that got Feinstein to the Senate, where Judiciary Chairman Joe Biden made her the committee's first woman. She immediately led the charge to pass an assault weapons ban. As the first woman to chair the Intelligence Committee, she took on the CIA's waterboarding of prisoners, leading to the outlawing of the Bush administration's harsh interrogations. In later years, she showed signs of age and poor health, noticeably frail when returning to the Senate after an absence, but rallying, voting yesterday before a visit with former Congresswoman Jane Harman.
I went there because I miss her, and she's been voting as she always did.
Always opening doors for women.
Diane left us the way she lived, on her own terms. She knew what she wanted to get accomplished. She respected diversity of opinion. She was as bipartisan as they come.
Dianne Feinstein did it her way, always bipartisan, even if frustrating some Democrats, but true to herself. Lester.
Andrea Mitchell, thank you. Kristen Welker, moderator of NBC's Meet the Press, joins us now. Kristen, California's governor will now have to make an interim appointment to replace Feinstein in some pretty tricky political waters.
That's right, Lester. The pressure's on California Governor Gavin Newsom to decide who will fill Senator Feinstein's Senate seat. Now, Newsom has said he would pick a short-term appointment, essentially a caretaker until next year's election. The governor recently told NBC he wouldn't choose anyone who's currently running to avoid tipping the balance. And among the candidates, Representatives Barbara Lee, Katie Porter, and Adam Schiff. They face off in a March primary. Newsom had also pledged to appoint a black woman to the role. Now, a source close to Newsom tells me tonight he will announce his selection in the coming days. Lester.
All right, Kristen Welker, thank you. In Georgia, the first plea deal today in the election interference case against former President Trump and 18 others. Scott Hall, a bail bondsman, was accused of trying to tamper with election data. Under the agreement, he pleaded guilty to 5 misdemeanor charges and was sentenced to 5 years of probation. Also breaking tonight, a man arrested in Las Vegas in the killing of Tupac Shakur almost 3 decades after the rapper was gunned down. The suspect had spoken publicly about being in the car that opened fire on Shakur. Here's Miguel Almaguer.
27 years after the violent and public murder of famed rapper Tupac Shakur, tonight Las Vegas authorities have finally announced charges in the case. Arrested today, self-described gang member Dwayne Davis has now been indicted by a grand jury for murder.
This is the indictment we've been waiting almost 3 decades for.
While police do not believe Davis was the triggerman in the 1996 drive-by shooting, he has long admitted he was inside the gunman's car when shots were fired on the Vegas Strip.
Dwayne Davis was the shot caller for this group of individuals that committed this crime.
Today's arrest comes just weeks after investigators raided Davis's Henderson home, seizing a trove of electronics, photographs, and a copy of his memoir, Compton Street Legends, in which he wrote and spoke about the shooting.
Who shot Tupac?
To keep it for the code of the streets. It just came from the backseat for him.
This case was reinvigorated as additional information came to light, specifically Dwayne Davis's own admissions.
With Davis in custody, authorities say the other men in the car that night are all dead.
A hip-hop icon whose music is legendary, Tupac was murdered at just 25. Tonight, with an arrest in the case, Shakur remains revered and relevant in life and death. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News.
In 60 seconds, a serious speed bump as the auto workers' strike against Ford and GM expands. Thousands more walking out. Why electric cars are at the heart of the fight. Next. 7,000 more workers walked off the job at Ford and General Motors plants today, with the strike against the big three automakers now in its 15th day. Jesse Kirsch has more now from Detroit.
Tonight, more United Auto Workers walking off the job.
The working class, we deserve a little more, and I would love to get it.
The union striking at 2 additional plants, including this Michigan General Motors facility. And after not targeting Ford last Friday, today the union putting that company back in the bullseye at a Chicago plant.
What changed with Ford over the last week? They just didn't, meet objectives where we need to be, and we went backwards. We've made movement on things. We've tried to accommodate some concerns the companies have, but at the end of the day, then they seem to move the goal line.
Today, Ford CEO Jim Farley taking a swipe at the UAW's president.
Sean has been on the TV more than Jake at State Farm at this point.
Farley says he believes the holdup is largely over electric vehicle development. EVs could require fewer jobs.
We still have time to reach an agreement and avert a real disaster, but not much more time given the fragility of the supply base.
Meanwhile, the UAW's president said the two sides are far apart on multiple issues, adding, like a good neighbor, we're available 24/7. GM says it's offering historic wage increases and job security while not jeopardizing our future. The union did not expand its strike against Stellantis, saying that company made significant progress last minute. Stellantis writing, we have made progress, but gaps remain.
Ford says its current offer allows an average employee to earn 6 figures within just 4 years. But so far, no deal. Lester?
Jesse Kirsch in Michigan, thank you. Up next, Richard Engel on the front lines of the war in Ukraine. What the children there have to do just to go to school. We're back with a closer look on the front lines in Ukraine and an unlikely place where children are finding safety in a war zone and a taste of normal life. Richard Engel reports.
For children in Ukraine, back to school means heading back into the subways as air raid sirens wail.
Russian forces still bomb Kharkiv almost every day, so teaching classes in the subways is safer. But there's also a practical reason. Nearly half of the city's regular schools have been destroyed.
The subway station is open, but in the lit rooms above the tracks, there's an elementary school. The kids seem to be doing great, but that's what worries the teachers, who don't want war to seem normal.
How do you think the war has changed these children? Do you think it's changing how they think?
Yes, it impacts everything. There will be after effects for many, many years, says Anna Nezhlova.
Give me 10. All right? Too slow. What's it like when you hear the air raid sirens go off?
Here, I don't hear the sirens at all. At home, they scare me so much, she says.
What do your parents tell you about the war?
I know they want our territory because we are quite a rich country and they want to take it away, says Sophia, who's 6 years old. At school in the subway, lunch is a highlight. Teachers here are working to make sure this generation of war gets at least a taste of childhood.
Many parents will understand how kids complain about going to school. Not here. The children we saw were running to go to school. It is the best part of their day by far, even in the subway. Lester.
Richard, thank you for bringing us that story. When we come back, Harry Smith explains how a new grocery store is nourishing a town where it's 50 years overdue. We're back with big news in the music world after Aerosmith canceled the rest of its farewell tour dates this year. The band saying that frontman Steven Tyler's vocal injury is more serious than they thought. He damaged his vocal cords and fractured his larynx. New dates will be announced for next year. Finally, tonight, Harry Smith has a close look at a neighborhood that hasn't had a new grocery store in 50 years and why it's already breaking barriers.
Waterloo, Iowa is on a top 10 list, has been for several years, rated among the worst places for Black Americans to live, a community that's long felt underserved. Developer Rodney Anderson believes that is soon to change.
This is a real grocery store.
This is a real grocery store.
You know, real grocery store, real jobs, real people, and real hope.
A 28,000 square foot, $10 million plus project that includes literacy programs, after school activities, jobs and training for the formerly incarcerated. It's called All In.
It's a community center that just so happens to sell groceries.
All In stands in sharp contrast to the trend of stores closing in cities because of crime. Anderson vows that will not be a problem here.
If they see blight, they're going to do blighted things. If they see development, they see success, this is a community store, so the community shall protect it.
Self-protect.
Yes, self-protect.
That faith, that hope, drew the attention of Naira Jordan, who works for the social impact arm of American Family Insurance.
It's really important that we connect ourselves to the individuals in community. People in community that are closest to the issue are also the ones that are the innovators, the change makers that have the solutions.
As best as anyone can remember, it's more than 50 years since a new grocery was built near here.
What do you say to the naysayers?
Come shop. I say come shop.
Harry Smith, NBC News, Waterloo, Iowa.
And that's Nightly News for this Friday. Join us Monday for my exclusive interview with outgoing Joint Chiefs Chairman General Mark Milley. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night. That's what it is. Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.